Hey, Antonio here with Enhanced Movements. We're going to be reviewing the difference between a deadlift or a hinge and a squat. Okay, very common question, even for those that have been doing fitness exercise activities, whatever it might be, for a long time. There are still sometimes some questions as to what is what. Now, there are some gray areas. We're going to refer primarily to this as a hinge. I believe more of a deadlift is a type of hinge, just like a squat is a baseline movement pattern. There's a lot of different squats, whether that be front squat, back squats, goblet squats, box squats. Again, you can go on. But a squat is a squat, right? A hinge is a hinge. A deadlift, whatever type of deadlift we're talking about, it has the basic foundation of a hinge. Okay, so if this is our normal kind of said standing posture, okay, here is our pelvis, here is our hip joint. Here's our knee joint, here's our ankle joint. We have a natural lumbar curve, mid-back curve, neck curve, and then we have our head, okay? These curves should be maintained throughout each one of these movements, and we'll dive deep into that into some other videos. But if I have my ribs here and here's my pelvis, whatever this sort of spinal position is, that box, while in a different spatial orientation, together the relationship of itself should be maintained in each one of these movements. That's critical for each one of these components. Now notice one is slightly flexed forward more than the other. That is because we're having another joint, the knee, that is doing more range of motion. So rather than jumping back and forth, we're going to just basically focus on the squat first and foremost here. So if this is our full position here, pelvis, back, knees, we see that we have pretty much almost maximal hip joint flexion here, as well as relatively maximal knee joint flexion. Now, each one of those can probably do a little bit more, but you're seeing a lot of knee flexion and a lot of hip flexion, and then thirdly, a decent amount of ankle flexion. That being said too, look at our lower leg tibial angle. There's a forward angle displacement in that squat. That's because the knee and the ankles are also flexing quite a bit. Now, the deadlift, hip, a lot of hip flexion, not as much knee flexion, and because there's not as much knee flexion, you're not going to see as much ankle flexion either, which will give us a relatively vertical tibial placement, okay? Now, because of that, you're going to see a much further torso angle displacement because you need to balance your center of mass. If I take a little plumb line here, this is our foundation support of our feet, right? If I go straight up from here, I need to ensure that my body center of mass stays right around there. Otherwise, I'm going to start having my toes come up, my heels come up, or I'm going to simply feel like I'm off balance and fall. Now, the same is also true for the squat. Here's our foundation, right? You see that right there? Draw a straight line through. It's going to stay balanced on top. So because the knee is coming further forward, the torso does not have to angulate as far forward, because that's going to keep us balanced from that forward and backward position. So these again are the main differences between the hinge and the squat. Your torso displacement, as well as what's going on in the major joints of the legs, and then even more importantly, the similarities between the two is the structures of the spine staying in the same relative orientation to each other no matter where the torso is bending, okay? Now, if you're having any trouble, there's definitely some simple hacks that'll get you to understand these principles a little bit better, and that makes the world of difference from not only like a pain mitigation standpoint, but also a performance standpoint. If you're not hinging right, you're not going to be able to pull heavy loads off the floor. If you can't squat properly, or your squat looks more like a deadlift or a hinge, that's definitely going to reduce the amount of load that you can squat up with. So if you have any questions, reach out to us here at Enhanced Movements, and we'll be happy to look through some of what's going on with you and see if we can help you out.